We are live. JT here. Welcome to the Huddle. The Huddle, for those joining us for the first time, is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. Why? So we can learn more about their journey to greatness. And what's the intention for you? It's because success always leaves clues. So I want to take a moment just to send a massive amount of appreciation to each of you, whether you're tuning in live, whether you're listening to the replay on the podcast. Thank you for choosing to be here with me and my special guest today. I've been looking forward to this conversation. We had an opportunity to reconnect in Tokyo in 2015. So we've stayed connected and, we've just been kind of, just shooting the breeze and just checking in on each other, see how life's going. And I'm really enthused to share his story with you here today. My guest in the huddle today is my good friend, Jay Leroy. How are you, Jay?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. I'm flattered. You're making me blush over here. You can't tell, but no, I'm glad to be here, man. Thank you. I've been following your podcasts and your channel for a bit now. It's been really fun seeing a lot of the guys that I haven't seen in a long time and hearing their experiences. So cool. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no worries. First and foremost, Jay, I want to start with a new way of kicking off the huddle. And I really want to take a moment just to send a massive amount of gratitude towards you. The reason I want to send it to you is when we caught up in Tokyo in 2015, I was going through a bit of a difficult period. And you just taking that time out of your busy schedule to take me out on the town for us to go to a Hezekiah, just, have some great food, catch up with some drinks, really helped remind me about, the beauty of life. And I just really want to thank you for being such a great friend and just being there when I needed it. So again, thank you so much, brother. I can't tell you how much that meant to me that night.
I'm glad that had such an impact. I love when people roll through. I've been living in a couple of different places, and when I get the chance to catch up with someone I haven't seen in a long time, I always want to get out and show them, kind of how to unwind in the place that I've been for a while. Tokyo was one of the coolest places to live ever. So we had a really nice time that night, and I hadn't seen you in how long? I think it was since football or even just crossing paths in London. So I'm glad that was a good time, man.
Yeah.
I was a good host, I hope.
You were a good host. Had a great time, and I made it back to my hotel. So that was all. It's all good.
That's good. That's a success then, right? Yeah. Cool.
So what I would love to know, Jay, again, like to keep it little light, little bit of fun, really keep it light and easy, is again, part of our community will know you just because we have come from a similar path. But for the people that don't know you, what is one thing about you that you would feel comfortable sharing? Something, maybe a quirk, maybe something about you, an interesting fact that maybe a lot of people don't know, but again, you would feel comfortable sharing.
So I guess for the people who do know me, kind of on the outside, would say, through sport, just playing a lot of sport and things like that. People saw me as, a social guy and things like that. I think a lot of people didn't know that, I actually came from a performing arts background. I went to Lester B. Pearson School for the Arts when I was younger, and I was a really artistic kid. I like playing music. I was singing, I was the Nutcracker and one of our, assemblies and things like that when we were younger, one of our productions. I don't think a lot of people know that there is a little bit of an artistic side to me that actually comes through in a lot of the things that I do and music and things like that. So I think that would be a surprise to some people who know me of, bashing heads on the field or on the ice or on the floor and lacrosse and things like that, or racing and track. I don't think a lot of people would have been like, oh, that guy, played the violin and guitar and can sketch still life and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that a lot of people would be surprised about, I think.
Okay. I I didn't know you went to Lester B. Pearson, so
There you
thank you for
go.
sharing that.
There you go.
So, what I would love to know, Jay, is one of the things in the huddle, again, it's all about learning from high performers from the world of sport and coaching. And I'm curious, sport has obviously been an integral role. It's been a major part of your personal growth and self-development. You were an amazing, athlete growing up in high school. You were an amazing athlete in university. And you're still in that space now as a head of phys ed, sort of head of phys ed and health. And what I would love to know is what role has sport played in your life, and what is, one of the biggest lessons you've taken away from it on your journey?
That's a loaded question because, there are so many little things that come up, as you look back at, your life and reflect on all the many experiences that you've had athletically. I think just the regiment that I had to, I had to become an organized person. Uh, I was always athletic. I was always talented. I was always good at whatever I tried coming up through high school. It was in those last years of high school where I realized that, you got to prepare. I wasn't used to preparing. I didn't have great coaches up until those last couple of years in high school that taught me the value of being prepared and putting in a little bit of extra work. Like I said, I was always able to just kind of show up and perform well. It wasn't until I started, putting some hours in the gym, putting some hours into playbooks and things like that, where I actually started seeing that success happen. It was, most of it was through my speed physically. And that work came from actually committing to our track and field program. I used to run races because I was fast and beat kids and jump far because I could. It wasn't until I started really breaking down skills and, putting in that time, to practice, that I started seeing that extra step. I didn't realize I was going to be able to go to university for playing football. You know what I mean? I in my last year, I was like, okay, I'll take these OAC courses, see what I was doing. I wasn't sure. I visited Waterloo. I was going to commit to Waterloo until I had a really good talk with Larry at Western. And I realized that the work that I had put in those last couple of years was starting to pay off and people were noticing me. I didn't really understand that. I didn't know people were looking at me and wanted me in other places. So yeah, I guess that would be it, preparing, failing to prepare is like preparing to fail. And that's what I use that a lot. And I know it's a cliche thing, but I use that with my kids all the time now because that is the one thing. The other thing is what is it? The failure to prepare. What is it? Talent beats hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard, right? So all those lovely, cliche things they put up on gym walls, if you really live by them and commit to them, the difference is huge. So that'll be the one thing that I think I took away from sport in general. Mm-hmm.
Well, and again, what I'm hearing from you is the importance of preparation. And for those who don't know Jay, you are one of the best athletes that I think I've had the pleasure of being around. And I mean, we've played with some great athletes, but I mean, you weren't only a great football player, right? You were a high level lacrosse player. You're a great hockey player, right? And you're great at track. So, I mean, it wasn't just, you weren't just a one trick pony. You were, it was a multi-sport. Now I'm curious with the whole preparation piece. What was that moment? Do you remember when you sort of that aha moment where that light bulb kind of went on and go, yeah, you know what? I'm pretty good. Like I'm, my natural gifts, talents, and abilities, make it, have allowed me to succeed. But for me to really get to that next level, I got to focus more on the preparation. Like, was there a moment where the light bulb went on? Was it a coach or mentor? Like, how did that all happen?
You know what? This is something that not a lot of people know, but it was the biggest point for me. And it came through not football, not hockey. It came through when I started realizing how much I loved the game of lacrosse. I had played house league just for fun in the summer. I was done with soccer. I really loved contact sport, and I think a lot of people that I played against will know that. I was a little bit of a hard-nosed guy. Some people might have even called me a goon on the hockey, on the ice, but it was in lacrosse where I started to excel. My speed and my grit on the floor in box lacrosse got some eyes on me. And I think I remember my dad saying that, hey, when I was 16 years old, um, someone from Notre Dame field lacrosse was out looking for me, and they had me tagged, as an early committal to go down and play field on a scholarship. And I was like, what? Like that was not even a thought. I didn't think sport was going to take me anywhere past having some really great friends and, smashing heads with dudes, which was pretty fun. Right then and there, I was like, what? I could go to the States on a scholarship for this game that I love to play. That it didn't end up happening, because I did end up actually committing to football more so, but that was the catalyst for like, okay, I got to start working on my stick. I got to start working on, learning plays. I got to start working on getting my shot a little bit better, my accuracy and things like that. And that year I did get drafted. The next year I got drafted into the Ontario Junior League where I played for the Kitchener-Waterloo Braves for a couple seasons. And then when I knew that, when I got drafted, I was like, wow, okay, so this is it. And then that's when all those things started falling into place. That's when Larry started calling me. I started going for visits to Waterloo and other universities, just realizing that. But yeah, it was that kind of that call that my dad got from a scout from the University of Notre Dame field lacrosse, which is an epic program. That really made me realize, yeah, you can choose. You have a couple choices here. Family always said it's got to include school. So I stepped away from box in Kitchener because I didn't want to move away from home at 17. And I also did want to concentrate on my studies and keeping my marks up for, the possibility of going to Western, or even if I did get that call down south for field. So yeah, that was that one.
Well, it's interesting hearing you share that, because it's funny how sometimes we don't even recognize what our gifts, our talents, and our abilities are. But it just takes one person just to acknowledge it, to let us know that, hey, I see the greatness inside of you. And it's by doing that, all of a sudden, then our confidence kind of grows, just because someone's like, oh, like it's almost like our eyes get wide open, right? We become aware and we get reminded of the truth. And this goes back to folks. This comes back to the fundamental truth of everyone has greatness inside of them. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like that recognition, that one conversation from your dad, that recognition from Notre Dame completely just changed your perspective.
Absolutely. And I think people who knew me around that time, I was probably getting into a little bit of the wrong friend group and things at that time as well. So it totally changed my trajectory of what I was planning to do. I didn't really have a plan, or I didn't know what I was going to do. Like I said, I was just out there having fun with the guys. I could score goals. I was a fast runner. I could catch a ball and things like that. I could run away from guys. But that's what it was for me until that point. I was like, okay, well, I got to get into the books here. I had failed a couple math classes. Like what? Not because I couldn't do it. It's just because I wasn't applying myself. So I was like, okay, here we go. I'm going to start working out. I'm going to start speed training. I'm going to start getting in the books. And when I did, it was just like, why wasn't I doing this stuff? And it was because the different influences, and we go through that when you're teenagers, a lot of things, we make mistakes and you learn from those mistakes. It's not like the mistakes that you made, as long as you don't make them again. Right. So learning from that and having that push from someone acknowledging me, like you said, just really pushed me to one side, which was the best thing that ever happened to me. So.
And you bring up an interesting point too, just on the importance of environment, right? Like who we surround ourselves with, right? And I love that analogy of you are the sum of the 5 people you hang around. If you hang around, turkeys, you're going to stay on the ground. But if you want to soar, I'll go back to what Coach Haley, right? If you want to soar with the Eagles, right? You better, you got to raise up.
Mhm.
So it's interesting there how you just talked about, having a greater vision for your life all of a sudden got you to start asking different questions, started getting you to form new habits around how you approach school, who you hung around, the type of preparation you were putting into your sports, and everything in your life changed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that kickstarted me into my university career where I was getting grades that I never even knew I could get. So
Yeah.
I was just super happy. I remember that first year was a bit of a struggle. I remember just sitting with Bantus and just we're like, how do we do this? Like, we're supposed to be at meetings. We're supposed to have like a 2-hour practice later on, but we're also supposed to have classes in between there and find time to study. And I thank goodness I didn't stay on campus. I stayed at home for that first year, and it made a difference. It made a difference. I needed that time to get my stuff together, learn how to study, learn how to manage my own time, get to practices on time. I love when Larry used to say, he's like, you're not on time. Being on time is 15 minutes early. And that's still to this day, like that's how I run my day to day. Me and my wife butt heads a little bit about that, but she's from South America and things move a little bit slower and
Yeah.
a little bit. But yeah, that first year was what set the groundwork for the rest of it. So
Okay. So after you were done a successful university career of, being a student athlete, you took sort of an unconventional path. And that is one thing I've always been inspired by watching you. And I think that when we reconnected a few years ago, even before that trip in 2015, I think that was the first message. I was just very inspired by watching you live life on your terms, by defining greatness on your terms, and just seeing all these beautiful pictures of the places you have traveled. So after university, you decide, okay, I'm going to go to a different path. I'm going to go to school in Australia. And then it took you, to Southeast Asia. And I'm curious, what sort of prompted you to take the road less traveled, as cliche as that is?
Yeah, so in that I did play. I played my full eligibility of 5 years. I finished a degree in 3. Those last 2 years, I was definitely coming back for a fourth. In that 5th year, in that summer, I really had to make some decisions. I wasn't sure. I was actually maybe going to go off to Australia in that 5th year and not finish until I really had a really good sit down with Larry. He pulled me into Thames Hall there and we had a chat. And he's like, look, we need you to come back. We need you to be a mentor to the team. We have one more really solid year here. We got a great quarterback. We need that. We need your position. And again, another acknowledgement, because there was a couple years where I was like, I was the second, third, fourth receiver, punt return, and it's kind of a little bit of Swiss Army receiver / specialist for a while, because we did have some great talent come through those years. I can't believe we didn't win more championships, but it's all about how that team gels. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So he did convince me to come back. Like I wasn't. So I took a summer course to come back in that 5th year. And in that last year, I realized that I did have another choice at that time. I was like, I could probably still do this at the next level if I did commit 100%. Even by that time, I still hadn't 100% committed to football. And a lot of people would be surprised at that. I was still playing summers of lacrosse, and I actually had to strike a deal with Larry and Nigel about that. It's like, you can't fight in the summer because you need your hands. I was like, don't worry. I've been beat up a couple times in that game, man. I'm not going to be fighting. But, I used the off season in summers to play lacrosse as my training. And I think that was a real big help to me. But it also, kind of kept me in between both sports. So when I finished, I realized maybe I could keep training and go and try out for the draft and things like that. I didn't really have anybody knocking down my door looking for me, but I knew if I, trained one summer, I could probably go and have a go at it. Or, also within those summers, I was coaching with the Four City Thunderbirds, which is a team, a summer league that I played with when I was coming up. And a couple of the guys, we used our summers that way. And I just had fallen in love with coaching and passing the knowledge that I have on to these young guys and watching coachable athletes just excel and reach their potentials. And, one day I was out there again on the field and I was helping one of the new receivers just, drop a shoulder into a cut drop your head. And I realized that these guys were going to be better than me and that I could help them. And in that last year, I just started being like, nah, okay, this is it. I like this too much. You know, I want to go, I want to have an impact on kids and see what that impact and where it takes them. So I had missed the applications for Alt House because a lot of people are just like, man, you know, like you have connections here at Western, you could go. And I had missed that application. I didn't want to sit out a year and do nothing. So I looked around and I was like, okay, I've always wanted to go to Australia. Me and my grandma, rest in peace, always talked about going to Australia. And I just loved, you know, the animals and just the mysterious things about Oz, you know. So I went and I researched some schools there. A lot of people were going to the Gold Coast to Griffith. And I was like, I don't really want to go live in a big city. So I chose this really great school called Southern Cross University. And it's in, like, I call it real Australia, in the northern rivers of New South Wales, in a small town. You know, they call it the Northern Rivers, where all the rivers meet. And it's more of like a farming community. So when I started doing my research there, I applied and I got accepted. And I was just like, I was pumped. I didn't have any money at the time, so I went and worked my butt off for another summer, saved up money, took a loan out, and I just packed my bags up and went. And the best decision I ever made. Best decision. Had some relationships that were tough to leave. But once I got there, it was just, I knew that I had made the right decision. It was sad, you know, I was like, okay, there's always going to be kind of like a coulda, woulda, shoulda thing for football and lacrosse. Like I look back at some of the guys who have really excelled and I go, oh man, it was great playing side by side with those guys. I maybe could have done that, but I wouldn't give up the decision that I made for the world for anything. It's brought me to where I am now. It's brought me my beautiful family, all the experiences that I've had. So, you know, that fork in the road, you know, left or right, there's not a wrong decision. I don't think the other would have been wrong. Right. But I don't look back and regret anything that I've done. So.
And it's interesting, like, as you drew that picture at the end, right, this fork in the road.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like that, you know, whatever you want to call it, your why, your purpose, like you just recognize that really coaching and helping mentor and guide young people was really what you felt. It was like a calling. Like it was just like, I don't know why. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I felt like I just started feeling that there was more to me, to Jay, than a dude who runs fast and catches balls and hits people. You know what I mean? Because that's where I felt like I was getting into. I was like, I'm falling into this really cookie cutter mold where there's just more to me that's not being, you know, sparked. Something in me is not being fulfilled. And this is pulling me towards there. And yeah, like I said, it was the right decision. Absolutely. I wouldn't say born to do it, but you know, it was my calling, absolutely, to be in the classroom, to be with kids, to just be, you know, creative about, you know, finding how people can reach their potentials. That's what fascinated me. And then obviously, you know, the travel and just realizing that the perspective of different cultures and different places, you can apply that to everyday stuff. So just seeing people in all sorts of different situations, like I said, puts a perspective that you can't get any other way. You can read all the books in the world, but until you get your feet on the ground somewhere different and really, you know, jump into another culture and other people's shoes, it's just so fulfilling. So yeah, you know, we could have traveled a lot with sport, I'm sure, but you don't get to do those extra things. You don't get to sit beside, you know, 80-year-old Japanese, you know, temple monks and things like that, and just have a conversation, or like walk to watch a sunrise in Cambodia off the top of a mountain. Like those are things you don't get from, you know, traveling and playing sport.
And I love that you share that, Jay. And really what came up for me as you shared that was, we're sort of led to believe at times that you can just gather more information, right? And that conscious mind, right? We're just store information, and you can read all the books. And I think travel is a great example of that. Like you can read all the books, you can look at all the amazing vacations you want on the internet. But like you said, until you actually book the plane ticket, get your feet down on the ground and start moving around and start exploring, you're not going to get a sense of what that true culture is, right? About of fully immersing yourself in the experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That immersion factor is just, it's priceless. It's priceless.
So I'm curious. So growing up, right, obviously in London and then going to the other side of the world, what has that experience been like, taking a risk, saying, as we were talking about before he came on, embracing that improv rule of saying yes and to new experiences? What has been, something that just has resonated with you? Like, what has it been like going to another part of the world and just completely shifting everything, like just totally immersing yourself somewhere new, somewhere different?
I have to say, it's like, it's this weird, and backpackers and travelers will agree, it's this weird like addiction. You do it once, and just like living in Australia and waking up and having like a kookaburra and like a water dragon outside my door, looking out on palm trees, looking out onto a valley with tropical birds flying around, little lorikeets coming up saying hello, like a little Disney movie. You know what I mean? Like, just waking up in different places like that and realizing that your day is going to be so different. Today is going to be so different. Even though, obviously I got to go to my scheduled classes and things like that, but like, I'm going to jump in my little car that I bought, that I share with my buddies. And I live in a big shared house up on a hill in like the subtropic rainforest. I'm going to meet people today that I never would have. There's the school that I went to had an exchange program with DePaul in the States, which I had no idea. So I was going to school with kids from the States, from undergrads from Australia, exchange students from Japan, and then a bunch of these, jockey Canadian dudes. I'm not sure. Do you remember a guy called Ashley Squire Smith? Do you remember Ash?
Yeah.
We were in the same program there, and I didn't even know until I got there, which was hilarious. And we ended up getting together on the first day, and we went out and found a house together with a couple other Canadian guys. So that right there was just something like, what? You just went to Australia and you didn't have a house? I was like, no, I didn't. I had my backpack and I knew I was enrolled in school. And they were like, we don't have any room left because all the exchange students took all the campus housing. So here's a list of houses, go out and look. I was like, I don't have a car. Well, here's a guy who'll sell you a car for cheap. So we're like, okay. So we grabbed a car and went cruising looking for houses the first day of school. That was just, things like that. Looking back on that, like, who would sign up for that? There's a lot of people who wouldn't just go, okay, move to Australia, I don't have a place to stay. So yeah, I don't even know. I went off on a little tangent there. Sorry. That's gonna be you're gonna experience a bit of that. I get caught in my own head.
Oh, it's all good. It was funny, like, as you were sharing that, I was just thinking that would take a lot of focused effort for me to go, to another and not have things booked, which again would be a great growth experience. And it actually reminded me of when I got to Japan, because I remember asking, where should I stay?
Oh,
you told me to stay in Asakusa. And I get there, and our flight from Hong Kong just got in late. And I remember I caught the last train out there, and I get there, don't speak the language. It's completely pitch black. And I have no idea.
Late at night.
I know, I have no idea. And I'm like, okay, I'm like looking there. I'm like, okay, you can do one of two things. You can call Jay, find out where the frick you are, or two, and I just have, just go with it. And I just happen to find two police officers and go. And I guess why I'm sharing that is just, it made me realize that situation I found has really helped as we've traveled beyond, because I've realized I chose to just dump myself in there, not knowing the language completely there, but just even asking those police officers for some direction was so good, because it just reminded me that you always have the ability to figure it out. But you got to take some action, and you got to be willing to get uncomfortable.
Yeah, you can plan things to a certain point, but then you got to kind of let go, because that's when the best things start to happen. That's when you start, getting those experiences. That would have been great. I know exactly what you're talking about. The late night trains in Tokyo, man. If you miss those, you're kind of stranded wherever you are, and not a lot of people, especially then. there's not a lot of English in Tokyo. People don't really realize that it is a world city, but not a lot of English. So good thing you found those two police guys. Basics. It's a
Yeah.
great area to stay though, hey? Around the
Yeah.
temple there, Sensoji. I love that. It's still one of my favorite places in the world.
Yeah. No, definitely somewhere where Alicia and I have talked about. We definitely want to go back there and travel as a family. Just there's something about Japan that I don't know what it is. Out of all the places I've been to in the world, there's just something that I feel just keeps calling me back. I don't know what it
People
is.
ask me all the time, what's your favorite place? I'm really, sometimes I kick myself for leaving, but again, I took another step, but it's like walking into history, but also the future. Like
Mhm.
it's just so exciting all the time, especially in Tokyo. Like there's just always something so cool and interesting happening. Like in that area, the reason I had to stay there is because that Sensoji temple is one of the oldest temples in Japan, and they have the Matsuri every year, where they walk the shrines down the street all day, and the guys carry the shrines on their shoulders and things like that, and then they have like a salsa festival there. You know what I mean? It's just such a great mix. I loved my time there, and I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it as well. We got to kind of link up there.
Yeah.
I'd love to go back. I keep talking to my wife about it, and unfortunately, due to COVID, I had like a perfect week planned in Tokyo, but we had to cancel everything because it was right that last March, I think, when everything kind of had to shut down. But I promised her before we leave Asia, we'll go and I'll take her for a walk through what the 5 years in Tokyo were like for me.
So being from the West and spending a lot of time in the Far East, I love the picture that I put up for anyone that saw the advertising. I love the picture of you because, you're holding the football, the lacrosse, and I love it just because that, again, that big smile, that great energy, it just, that just so summarizes you. Have you been able to introduce some of, Western culture over there? Like, is that something, does that picture, like, are you introducing things like lacrosse, American football? Are you bringing those ideas to the young people that you're teaching over there?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was one of the first things that I did when I got I worked at a school called K International School. It's a full IB school. And I had to take a while to like get into the PYP because I hadn't had any PYP experience at that time. I started in the PYP in the primary school years program for people who don't know what that is, and then worked my way into the middle years program. But I was essentially like a K to grade 6 with a grade 9 class teacher, and I immediately put in a lacrosse and hockey unit. And we ordered all like the soft cross equipment, and it blew up. They loved it, and I was loving life, man. They're all like, "This is so great." We dove into, it's called the creator's game, because I played with a lot of guys who made sure that I knew what that game meant when you played it, because it's not just, that's what also I fell in love with lacrosse, because it's not just another game. That has such historical implications when you play it. And if you get to sit down and talk to anyone about the actual history of where lacrosse came from and how it became what it is today, it's just so interesting. So I gave them the roots of that, and they just hooked, line, and sinker right away. Lacrosse craze for 5 years at that school in Tokyo. And it actually ended up giving me some contacts with a local box lacrosse league. There was some Japanese guys there that got together and played. Like I think one guy had played in the States, and he brought his love of it over, and I went and we started a couple box lacrosse teams and just scrimmaged and things like that. And they were pretty good too. So that was another little thing, finding a little community outside of the school, this group of lacrosse guys, university students who wanted to learn more. So I got to go out and throw the ball around with them every once in a while. But yeah, the lacrosse and hockey unit was really cool to bring to Japan.
I just learned something about you. And it just made me aware of one of the characteristics of every high performer, right? Every high performer, they're coachable, they're open-minded, right? And that's one thing that I think people don't realize, is that when you're open to new ideas, when you're open to growth and open to learning from people, you just, it forces you to level up in a good way. And you have this beautiful ability, brother, to as I just think of Coach Taylor, right? Like paying homage, right? Like tradition of taking things that, you know, the old way of doing things and respecting it, but then also being so open-minded that there are opportunities to grow and innovate.
Mhm.
And why that came up is I heard how you describe why you love Japan. It is a beautiful mix of old and new. Same with lacrosse. You talked about it's paying homage to the roots and going here. So I'm curious, is that something that has always been a part of you? Is that something that someone taught you? Like that's
That's
unique.
something, yeah, that's something that came that I've developed, honestly. I think, you know, if I really do look back to some of the sporting before I took off on my little adventure, I probably could pinpoint a couple times. I think, you know, PJ was a great receivers coach for us. And he was one of the first coaches that really taught me, you know, this is how I did it when I was in university. And the way that you just did it there was like better because of this. And this is why. Like that step was really good because that's what I coached you to do, but you actually like added your own spin to it. You know what I mean? Or this, you know, this whip route, we used to call it a whip route, but the way that you pivoted out of it is actually better because you reacted to the defender rather than just doing the thing I told you to do. And when I started realizing that, okay, you know, you can coach kids to do things, but you know, like those routes are not always written in the sand, right? You got to be able to make decisions on the fly. So you take the old things that you've learned and you got to adapt them to every situation. That's how I approach teaching as well. And I think I've had more experiences with that concept through teaching because, you know, we always say as teachers, you know, we're preparing kids for not the world that they're living in now. We're preparing them for the world that they're gonna be in. You know, we can't teach the kids only what we know because that's not going to help them at all because they're not going to be prepared for, you know, how fast this world is developing. And may it be math, you know, English, science, history, all that stuff is changing every day. So, you know, again, being prepared and doing, you know, yearly, I take some sort of professional development just to stay on top and, you know, see what's going on out there, see what people are doing that's new and adapt to things that I know are right. You know, you need a great base, you need a foundation, you need that scaffold, and then just to, you know, keep building on that. So the thing that's what I enjoy about teaching and, you know, moving to different places and teaching. A lot of people, you know, will stay at one school and teach their entire career there. I'm not sure that I'd be able to do it. I'm not sure. I think 5 years is probably my max at the moment. You know, then I get the itch to go and learn from new people and, you know, add my spice to their, you know, to their soup, I call it, you know, and see how I can help make things better. And it's not really the pursuit of, you know, perfection or anything like that. It's just the process of making things more efficient and, you know, allowing kids to add their own things to the mix. So I think, you know, the teaching journey is what really developed that in me. I probably say the same things over and over, but that's the basis of it. Yeah.
You bring up a great point. You know, what I heard from you is it's so funny. You work with many young people and it's really that programming, that conditioning that we've been sort of led to believe that safety and comfort and always doing things the same old is, you know, good. But really it's when you embrace risk taking, when you embrace discomfort and learning that is the only way to get to your next level of greatness, that I find that it's even just simplifying it. It's just sort of disciplining your mind to say, you know what, when I give you a command, you're going to go do some uncomfortable things. And when you can push yourself to do that, your body to do it, it's just, it's like a sprint, right? If you can push yourself to go that extra yard, it's just, you're keeping integrity with your word. You're keeping promises that you make to yourself. And that's hallmark of any successful and highly effective person.
Yeah. It's like a little thing I do with my kids when I warm them up. You know what I mean? I say, okay, we're going to run from this line to this line. You got to touch the line. I don't care how fast you are. I don't care how slow you are. I don't care how you get there, but touch the line, right? If you don't touch the line, then you haven't even taken that first step towards seeing what is the possibility. right? I'm asking you to touch the line, go touch the line. Like, it doesn't matter how fast, how slow, how you do it. We're going to go from here to here. And the only thing that I need you to do is touch that line and get back there. You've seen this probably before. How many kids don't touch the line? What have they just done in their minds? It's so simple. It's just a simple thing, but what have they just done in their own minds? They've cut a corner, they've come up short, and they're okay with it. So just that little fundamental thing, that small little lesson, you can teach kids. I just say, remember, touch the line, touch the line, touch the line in math class, touch the line in science, touch the line when you're playing, in the fourth quarter, touch the line, finish what you're meant to do. You will be so surprised at what comes after that. Right? Then you got kids like just bomb into the half and back, touching the line, getting faster. Then I say, okay, I'm going to teach you guys some different movements. We're going to touch the line doing this. I don't know, that's too hard. No, it's not. Just go and touch the line. I don't care what it looks like or how you do it. Make a mistake, we'll figure it out. I'll help you get better, but make sure you touch that line, right? It's just those little, I think there's a couple memes and things like that on the internet of touch the line, this is the difference, the circle of the line not touching, right? This is the difference between a win and a loss. So it's so true, those basic things. And watching kids just go like, whoa, no way, that just worked. It's so fun, like every day, just watching kids realize their potential. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I love the simplicity of just that analogy. And that, what speaks volumes about who you are, an educator. And this is where I firmly believe that, educators, coaches, great teachers are such effective communicators, because you just painted such a beautiful picture right there. Just by you touching the line, you're teaching them about discipline. You are teaching critical thinking in the fact of just touch the line, like just try the movement. We'll try. And it's just, you're just getting them to don't figure out, like, just do it. Right. And just use your thinking, doesn't matter. And you're getting them to sort of connect to their body and embrace risk taking, like so many valuable, simple life lessons that will serve them well, even when they leave your gym. Right. So it's so good.
And the thing that I like to pride myself on now is just like, I like to teach conceptually. I don't really like to teach. I don't have like skill assessments. Do you know what I mean? Like there's never any class where I put like, you have to be able to hit the ball. You know what I mean? We talk about conceptual things. It's like that concept and that lesson, they're going to be able to apply it to their whole, educational experience. Like, if you have a due date, you know what I mean? And the line or the due date is the Monday, right? And you don't touch, you don't make that. Okay, we got to learn from that. Don't do it again, right? Doesn't matter how you get there. If you did it the night before that time, let's talk about how that went for you. How did that feel, right? It's like if you just walked half the court and then sprinted the last little bit, how did that feel? And what did you see everybody else doing? And how did that feel when, you walked back to the line, right? How did that feel when you crammed the night before? And what were those results like? What are you going to do different next time? That whole like inquiry cycle of like, let's look back and reflect. It doesn't matter how well you did that time. And that's the thing that's really tough for route learners in Asia. And this is why I really like breaking that mold, is that they need to get the right answer. And it doesn't matter. Once that test's done, it could be out the window. But the way that we teach at the school, and that's why I really enjoy and embrace the IB, the International Baccalaureate, the PYP, MYP model, is that the inquiry process is just so much more powerful than that route learning memorization stuff. I wish that I had it, because it's the way my brain works. It's the way it's always worked. But the way that I was taught was never really that. So that's why I've looked back and I've understood why I struggled so much in the later years of school, and how I learned to learn in university, and then how I learned to teach, and now how I learned to teach learners, right? So I'm not teaching kids how to be fast or shoot basketballs. I'm teaching them how to learn. So I think that's a really important thing that a lot of people who are outside the educational field don't really understand, and how complicated and difficult that can be sometimes. And to make it fun, right? To give kids agency and accountability for themselves. So that's the fascinating thing that I love about teaching. A lot of people look at me like I'm a PE teacher, but I look at myself as a teacher first who teaches PE, right? So there's a lot of people like, who get called coach all day long. I'm not really a big fan of that.
Okay.
Of course I coach. When I'm out coaching on the floor, that's great. But when I'm teaching, I'm doing a vastly different process.
Yeah.
You know, when you're coaching, you got a group of kids who want to be there and want to get better at the thing that you're doing. When you're teaching, you have to hit just such a variety of learning styles, personalities, and things like that. And so the conceptual model is just so much more powerful in reaching all those that group of kids. Anyway, teachers will hit on that stuff, but for
Yeah.
people who are outside the education field, it's a little bit of a peek inside what we do.
Well, and again, you bring up the interesting point, and I think back to what the meaning of, where the word education came from, right? And you don't need to be come from education background to go, but education comes from the Greek word educo, and really education to me, and again, I know that you would probably agree, is that it's not teaching people what they don't know. It's teaching them to behave like they're not already doing, right? It's like teaching them to behave in a certain way so they can get the results that they want, right? To get to that next level, to push them, like you talked about, to their potential. So I love that. I just love hearing other educators that embrace that model too.
Yeah, just like I like that the modern educational model is all about choice for kids. Like I never got a choice of what I wanted to learn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I did, it would have been great. I mean, in like early public school, you get to choose what your ISP, your individual project or whatever is going to be on. But after that, it's kind of like, hey, you got to do this to get these marks. And at least it was for me. I know that now in schools, it's just really great to see kids be able to choose. Like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the personal project that comes up in grade 10.
Okay.
For the IB, the MYP, these kids get to choose these wonderful things, and they are studying and working towards a goal in all of their subjects, something that they've chosen that they have is relevant to them, and so they just have such an attachment to it, and it's I don't know, it's awesome to see where education has gone from what it was.
It's amazing what happens, and folks, if you take anything from this, it's amazing what happens, right? And I go back to this definition of success. Success is the pursuit, right? Is the progressive realization of a worthy idea, worthy goal. And a word, what I mean by worthy idea, worthy goal is it's got to be meaningful to you. And I love, and just listen to what Jay's talking about, is when you truly identify something that's meaningful to you, something you really, really want, it's amazing just the level of energy and enthusiasm. And it doesn't matter whether you're 4, you're 14, you're 44, you're 84. That is a special feeling when you connect to that.
Yeah, and that's where you get those people, you talk to them, you're like, are you going to work today? And they're like, well, yeah, if you want to call it that. I don't really go to work. Like, it's not really work for me. It's fun. Like, I love designing, learning experiences through sport and movement that tie to like history. You know what I mean? Like I did a unit with a guy. This guy kind of goes back to what we talked about before, but when I moved from Tokyo to Seoul and was working at a school, I had a history teacher, awesome history teacher, still a buddy of mine, Joe Gasner. Shout out Joe. If he's listening, I don't think he will be, but we'll see. I'll show him this. He was doing a Mesoamerican history lesson. And I was like, dude, I have a couple free weeks here. Let's dig deep into what the ancient games were like in Mesoamerica. So I learned about poke to poke, like an ancient hip bumping game that they played in the Mayan, in the Mayan temples and stuff. And we got together and I just threw a bunch of stuff that I had together and we started playing it. And we were playing, it's great, man. It's amazing what you can do with kids. What Korean kid thought he was going to show up to a private school one day and be like playing an ancient Mesoamerican game, and that went towards credit to his history class. You know what I mean? That's the fun stuff that you can do now.
So good. I love it. And I remember watching that when we were on a vacation. We went to this dinner theater, Alicia and I, and remember seeing that game where they recreated it. I remember videotaping it, showing to my geography and phys ed class, and they were like, it's amazing. They loved it. It's
hard to play. It's so hard to play. The guys were soccer crazy at our school, so they were pretty skilled with it, and they just dove right in, man. Yeah. It's very cool.
So what I would love to do, Jay, is ask you one final question. So
Time
I'm,
flies. Hey.
I hear you. Again, it's just, that's the beauty when you connect with like-minded people, right? Time just
Mhm.
flies. So I would love to know, this last year, depending on when people are watching this or listening to this, it's been interesting, right? To say the least. And there are people that are really struggling. Now things are opening back up, which is great. But, maybe someone is struggling with their health. Maybe they've had a relationship breakdown. Maybe their finances are really in disarray. Maybe they've lost their job. Maybe just life has knocked them down a few times over the last year. What is one piece of advice that you could give them just so that they could get back on their feet, they could take action and start creating some positive momentum and get them back on their path, on their journey to greatness?
Yeah, I mean, what a year for mental health. We've actually been really talking about that at the school. We put our professional goals aside this year, actually, and we really focused on mental health of the students. The one big thing that I've heard, uh, a lot of people don't know this about, I studied a little bit of addiction and things like that in psychology in university. And there's one thing that I really took away from it when I found myself getting into a little bit of a negative feedback loop. You're just like in that spiral where just nothing seems to be going. It's just, you got to find one little thing every day that is a positive thing, or go chase that one little positive. I think nowadays I think we're getting used to just getting things so fast. And, if we don't reach our goal immediately, then we're just disappointed. And I think just finding, it doesn't happen right away. Nothing happens, especially, treatment of depression and coming out of those things. It's never going to happen right away. You got to find those little wins every day and just keep those. I had a really good chat with my best man, my buddy Drew, the other day. We talked about how the brain wires itself. If we, create these neural pathways, it's just like practicing something. If you practice negative thinking, you're going to get very good at thinking negatively. And so just climbing slowly out of that hole, it's not like jumping out of a well, you know what I mean? You can't do it. You got to take it step by step. Find those little things every day that make you happy. I was so lucky to have like one of the coolest experiences through this year. And I was talking about that with my sister-in-law yesterday was, thank God for my son this year. We didn't have a chance to, get in our own heads or, have anything, because we had to be there for this little guy that we brought into the world. Because if you don't know, I had a son through this whole pandemic in Korea. And actually just last week, he's just met his family. So, we went through our own things, just like everybody, our own problems, but we had to look every day and, what was the one good thing. We were lucky that we had that little dude to, put up in front of us, and you make a funny face, or, change a poopy diaper, or, pee in my face.
Yeah.
Maybe not the most positive things, but yeah, I guess bottom line, so I stop rambling on, is just find those little positives, celebrate those little wins, and they'll inflate every day. And you'll start creating those little neural pathways in your brain to practice thinking positively. And by the end of it, you'll be amazed at the reflection that you have, and say, how did I even think that way before? Glass half full, half empty, I guess, is the simple way to put it, right?
Yeah. And I love your point. It reminds me of, that Napoleon Hill. It takes no more effort to aim high in life than it is to sort of accept mediocrity, right? And hey, it's easier said than done. But when, as you were talking about, when you aim to set that bar high, in other words, it's going to pull you, right? It's going to force you to level up in a good way, and you'll be better for it, right? You'll feel better, most importantly, and that's so important.
Teach kids to make realistic goals. Like, you really got to look at what you're asking yourself to do and know if is that achievable. I mean, just like simple, like teacher things, SMART goal. It's a simple way. If you're not used to setting goals in a structured way, try a SMART goal. Google it. I'm not going to go through a lesson here today, but like achievable, goals are important, because if it's something that's unachievable, again, you're just going to disappoint yourself, and then you're going to continue with those kind of disappointing experiences and negative thoughts. So, but yeah.
First and foremost, Jay, I really wanted to just take a moment just to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for the man you are, for the husband you are, the dad you are, for the son, the educator, the teacher, the coach, and most importantly, for the great human being you are. One of the things that I've always been inspired by is just your love of life, right? And I just, I'm glad that you shared about your son. I remember seeing this video of you playing with him in the pool, and you could just see that, like, your love for him, your love of life it's inspiring. It reminds me at times about what life is really about. So I just want to thank you for that.
It's amazing what perspective changes when that little guy pops out, little girl. I'm sure you know that as well. Mm-hmm. It's life changing. Mm-hmm. Everything changes that moment, and I'm loving every second of it. Mm-hmm. I was like, I think I was meant to do this. So yeah. Hey man, I want to say thank you. You're very inspiring. The fact that you've taken this leap towards what you're doing. I've been watching your chats with people. It's really cool to hear from guys I haven't heard from in a long time, and all the messages that are coming through these talks are awesome for all the people who are listening. I think it's a great thing you're doing, and I'm glad that you took the leap of faith and just went for it.
Thanks, brother. So I'm curious, how can people connect with you? Maybe some of our old teammates are seeing that and like, I haven't talked to Jay in a while. Maybe someone just, looks and just loves just the way you approach life. What's the best way people can connect with you?
I think that the Instagram is what I've got on most. I have a phantom Facebook page that if you look on Facebook, it's just an account that I created because I had a bunch of kids trying to look me up. So Facebook's probably not going to work for people who I haven't spoke with in a while, but my Insta, I think you put it on the title page there. Yeah. At J. Leroy Brown. People are wondering what Brown is, just kind of a funny thing. J. Leroy was taken. So hit me up on there because I'm quite active on there these days. And I'm also on LinkedIn. I can't remember exactly what my name is on LinkedIn. But I'm active professionally on there. I do a lot of sharing for the IB program, the MYP, and physical education. So cool. Yeah, if you want to hit me up, go for it. It was really cool. I heard from a bunch of people just from me posting and me reposting that title slide that you made. So here's the little guy here.
Well, I'll be sure to share all that in the description there, brother, and I'll make life easy for everyone, because I know again, great conversation. Hey, that's one of the best parts of why I love these conversations, because I get to learn stuff and get, I've taken so much away from you. So thank you again for making time, especially on your summer break, to be able to come on and share your journey with us.
What a great way to start the day, man. It's been a little reflection for myself as well. It's a good thing to do every once in a while, think back. And I appreciate you for acknowledging me. It was one of the themes that we talked about in earlier, and so people acknowledge kind of the things that you're doing. It takes you to another step, that self-affirmation, I'm doing things right. And some people are noticing because, sometimes if you don't get that, sometimes you can feel like, all right, am I doing things right? Am I still doing things well? So everybody gets there. But it's really nice to hear these things coming from you. It's been awesome to be able to share some of the things that I've experienced. So I really appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Hey, for sure. So folks, again, for those tuning in live, we are going to double header it up. So we'll be back in an hour. Got another conversation today. Going to try out the double header. But again, if anything came up, I'd love to hear. I'm sure Jay would love to hear what resonated with you. And other than that, I will see you next time in the huddle. Have a great day, everyone.